I don't know about you guys, but these days I have a lot less time than I would like to play video games. As we get older, our priorities may shift from gaming to things like work and family, and that's okay. But with time being such a valuable resource, it's important to spend your gaming time playing something that you actually enjoy. When trying to find good classic retro games to play, you have to be careful, as a lot of reviewers out there are blinded by nostalgia, and I'm sure I've been guilty of this at times. I have a lot of retrospectives on my channel that were probably impacted by great childhood memories, but as a modern gamer who values their time and doesn't want to spend hundreds of hours on a collectathon or a grindy RPG, are there any retro games out there that are actually worth experiencing still? Well, today, we are going to focus on classic Nintendo games that actually hold up still, even if you have no sentimental attachment to them. Now, one of the great things about all of the games I'm going to cover today is they are all available on the Nintendo Switch in one way or another. Whether it's through their online service or from the eShop, you won't have a hard time finding these games, as actually getting a hold of games is one of the biggest challenges when it comes to retro gaming. We're going to take a look at a small selection of games originally released on the Super Nintendo and the Nintendo 64. And full disclosure, I'm not saying these are the only games worth playing. I'm just saying these are the ones that I have spent an extensive amount of time with and could give my Holy Grail gaming seal of approval on. So without further ado, first up we have Star Fox 64. My channel usually focuses on RPGs, so as an RPG fan you may be surprised to see a flying shoot 'em up of sorts on here, but Star Fox 64 is really that good. Star Fox for the Super Nintendo is also excellent and arguably could have taken this spot, but what Star Fox 64 has that the original doesn't is solid 3D graphics and way tighter controls, thanks to the introduction of the joystick on the N64. Now Star Fox 64 does a ton of things well, but I can truly say it's one of the only games that will make you want to replay it as soon as you finish it. This is really because of two things: multiple routes you can take throughout the game, and excellent pacing. Star Fox is a level-based game, with all routes leading to one big bad boss at the end. But the cool thing is your actions throughout the levels impact what route you take to that final boss. This means that you can play through the game multiple times and play through a variety of different levels throughout. Some games give you multiple endings or multiple storylines, but require you to play through a bloated 50 hours in order to experience them all, whereas Star Fox 64 only takes about an hour or two to complete, leaving you wanting more and making you actually want to replay it. And as I mentioned before, the pacing on this game is on point. It is action-packed excitement throughout without any noticeable low points. On top of this, it has the perfect amount of level variety, with some levels even requiring you to drive a tank instead of a spaceship, which is the perfect balance of feeling fresh but not overwhelming you by requiring you to learn too many new mechanics, because the tank parts still control essentially the same way as the spaceship. Whether you play it once or 100 times through, Star Fox 64 absolutely values your time and is still worth playing today. Next up, we have Super Metroid for the Super Nintendo. A lot of people will put The Legend of Zelda: A Link to the Past at the top of their Super Nintendo games list, but I'll make the argument for that spot belonging to Super Metroid. Very rarely do I consider a game flawless, but Super Metroid is about as close as they come to that, with its only real flaw being that it's a bit difficult and might require the help of a walkthrough or a strategy guide at times. So if you've never played a Metroid game, what they all have in common is their special items hidden in plain sight which require you to backtrack and explore at some point. Now that may sound tedious, but for some reason it's not. Maybe it's a combination of the tight controls and outstanding soundtrack, but given the extreme critical praise pretty much every Metroid game gets, Nintendo clearly found a formula that works. Metroid games are all known for having excellent and well thought out world design, but Super Metroid takes the cake here for me. I think it might have something to do with the hardware limitations of the Super Nintendo, but I find that things just make sense on Super Metroid more so than any other Metroid game. The world feels small, yet so massive. Boss battles feel so challenging until you learn their patterns and all of a sudden you become a pro, giving you Dark Souls levels of satisfaction upon completion. If you've played Metroid Dread and enjoyed it, this should be next on your list, and even if you haven't, do yourself a favor and go check it out, as it definitely still holds up today. Next up on the list, we have Final Fantasy VI, or originally known in North America as Final Fantasy III. potentially the most influential JRPG of all time and widely regarded as the best in the series. Though these days not exclusive to Nintendo, it was originally released on the Super Nintendo, and you can purchase it as part of the Pixel Remaster bundle from the eShop. This game was the last of the 2D pixel art mainline Final Fantasy games, and really one of the most expansive and groundbreaking games released on the Super Nintendo. Final Fantasy games were all large open world games even before this one, but not quite on the same scale. A massive world, beautiful pixel art graphics, fun and challenging combat, interesting characters with a great storyline full of plot twists. What more can you ask for? I'll be honest, if you're not a fan of RPGs, Final Fantasy VI probably won't convert you over. But if you are a fan, this game is about as perfect as they come. It really is a near perfect JRPG. Today, almost 20 years later, a majority of RPGs still fail to reach the heights set by this game. Though I personally really loved the original, what helped this game make the list is the quality of life improvements in the Pixel Remaster version. These days it may be hard for a newer gamer to get into such a long game with random encounters. But luckily with the Pixel Remaster version you can turn off random encounters and better balance the game to your liking, making it well worth playing today. And last but certainly not least, we have a game myself and many others consider the greatest game of all time, The Legend of Zelda: Ocarina of Time. This game needs no introduction. It's sitting at the #1 spot on Metacritic for good reason. Before this game, the Legend of Zelda franchise redefined what a large action-adventure game could be with A Link to the Past, but technological advancements on the Nintendo 64 allowed for Ocarina of Time to be so much more than what we could have expected. This was an open world like never seen before, from a time when video games were made with care and attention to detail. I've mentioned music multiple times in this video, but Ocarina of Time truly has my favorite soundtrack ever. The song in the main menu still gives me goosebumps when I start up the game. The open world feels like it was designed to have players spend hundreds of hours exploring every single inch of it. The graphics may look a little triangular by today's standards, but they were way ahead of their time. The real-time combat system is tight and responsive and still holds up, and you can see its influence across almost every ARPG game today. And on top of all of this, the game implemented a time system unlike anything we've ever seen before. Ocarina of Time allows you and requires you to travel back and forth from childhood to adulthood. When you're a child, the world possesses a bright innocence of sorts, and when you're an adult, the world is dark and constantly on the brink of destruction. I've talked about it on the channel before, but I believe this was the developers trying to represent how we see the world in real life as a child versus as an adult. This list is not in any specific order, but if I could only recommend one game on this list, it would be this one, as I genuinely feel like The Legend of Zelda: Ocarina of Time redefined what a video game could be and is still absolutely a must-play. So thank you all so much for watching. I know this is a pretty short list being just 4 games, but I wanted to recommend games that I honestly believe are still worth playing rather than just games that are critically acclaimed. And also I wanted to make sure that all the games I talked about were available on the Nintendo Switch. Are there any games that I missed that you feel like should be on the list? Let me know down in the comments section below, as I'd love to check them out myself. And be sure to like this video and subscribe to the channel for all sorts of gaming content. As always, take care and I'll see you in the next one.